Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We warmly welcome you once again to A to Y. I'm Yasas.
And I am Asi.
So after a week, once again, Asi, we connect at 6:30 Sri Lanka time, 5 o'clock Gulf time. How are things?
Oh, pretty heaty. It's like crazy heat here in Sri Lanka.
It's no different over here. Like right now at 5 o'clock, it's 35 Celsius. So getting warmer.
It's in Kandy. It's now 6:30 sharp. It's 33.
Okay, so no different, right?
Absolutely.
Anyway, Azi, because we have a challenge of 15 minutes, we've already burned one
Yes.
minute. We have 13 minutes, about 14 minutes for us to finish. And last week we started talking about questioning not as
Oh yes.
interrogation, but questioning as a technique for innovators, entrepreneurs, and salespeople, how they can
Mm,
use questioning to their benefit. So
mm,
let's quickly go into the last slide, Azi, which we showed last week.
yes.
And
Yes.
last week's slide was we talked about this framework where you can use
Yeah.
5W8, 1H, 5 Ys, Ishikawa diagram, and root cause analysis. So if you have missed last week's episode, we would request you to go to Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, search for #33, and you will be able to find this video on about the first part of question. Today
Correct.
we are moving forward from here. By the way, we've got some comments. Okay, Ranga says hi Ranga, nice to have you.
Hi Ranga. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah. So let's move in. Okay, developing the questioning skill, Lazi. I think this is again an important thing,
Correct.
especially in an organization. If you want your teammates or if you want your organization to have that as a skill, or as an individual, if you want to
Mm,
develop your skill on questioning, these are some points that you can actually use. You
mm,
can, number one, engage in question storming. I think, Azi, many of us have probably heard of brainstorming. So
correct.
let's explain what question storming is, right? Yeah. So question storming is no different to brainstorming. Brainstorming is where you get together and you start talking about or thinking about a particular problem and you brainstorm about different ideas. Question storming is no different. What happens is you get as a team or as a group and you start asking all possible questions. And what you
Mm,
do is you can do it in two different ways. One is you can do it with a whiteboard kind of situation, a blackboard kind of situation where you write all the questions. Or a better way is probably using something like post-it notes, where you start writing question on post-it notes and you start pasting it in front of you. Now, two rules. No question is a stupid question. That rule has to be
absolutely.
there. And you should
Absolutely.
never be worried about asking a question. The reason is the more questions you have, the better it is. Once you've written these questions, then what you do is you start categorizing them. You
Mm,
categorize them by the category of the questioning. Maybe it's internal, it's external, or it's related to your product. It could be related to your brand. So you start categorizing these questions based on the different types of questions. And once you categorize them, there'll be a lot of duplication. You start removing
mm,
this duplicated questions and you start answering the most important question. This is how question storming works in a nutshell. Because of time issue, I'm sorry I'm rushing, but this is question storming. The next point is you have to cultivate a question thinking in environment, because if you look at a home base or if you look at an organization, sometimes questioning is not that appreciated. It's being sometimes considered rude. So you need to create a culture where people, teammates, colleagues, peers, subordinates, superiors, anyone can question. So
yes.
cultivate that question thinking. Before you start answering questions, you have to always start asking questions. So get people to start thinking of everything from a question form. The next point is, sorry, Azim, were you going to ask something?
No, no, no. Carry on. Carry on.
The next thing is you have to have a track your question to answer ratios, because if you feel that you're answering more than questions, then that's not a healthy relationship. So,
Mm,
example, if you have two questions and one answer, you divide two by one, or if you have four and you divide by two, you're talking of two as your ratio. So, Every time your ratio gives a positive figure, that's a good environment. Because you're having more questions than more answers. Of course, that doesn't mean don't answer every question. You need to answer every question, but
Mhm.
either if it's a ratio of one or if it's positive, you could kind of take it as a good environment.
Mm.
Then the final point is keep a question centered notebook. Now, most of us use notebooks on a day to day basis to take notes and to write down our to do list, so on and so forth. Have a separate book of questions where, whenever you have a question, whenever you are challenged of a problem, start writing these questions in this notebook. Now, it's a very good practice. Personally, I don't do that. I do it in my normal notebook itself. But it's good to have a separate question notebook, because the moment you're stuck with a problem, that's the point that you take your notebook and you start asking questions. Now, as a salesperson, you can't take multiple books to your clients or to your prospects. So obviously you might have to use your notebook. One principle I do is I divide my book into two parts.
Mm.
Especially when it comes to glossary, when it comes to important things, I write from back to front, and daily notes I write from front to back. So what happens is at one point it will probably meet up, but that's one way to segregate. Or if you use a organizer, you have separators in them, or you can find innovative ways of organizing your notebook, so that you can take different sections for different purposes. So that's about developing questioning skills within you as a team and as an organization. Anything you want to add on, Azi, before I move into the next slide?
Yes, I like to add one point for the engaging the question storming, brainstorming versus question storming. So, one technique that we actually use, or rather we practice every single day, when we have a challenge, we allow our team to write down every questions in a piece of paper, or just like Yasa said, on your book or notepads, without judging the question. So when you are writing down the question, you have to have a judgmental free mind. Why it's important is when you judge yourself, hey, is this question going to be is it a dummy, stupid question? So probably that question might be the most important question at all. So don't judge yourself when you are writing, or rather when you are dumping the questions onto a piece of paper. That's the point
Exactly,
I
Auntie.
wanted to
And
add.
sometimes the most simple questions are probably the best questions, because
Mm.
sometimes people tend to think complex questions which have simple answers, but the most simple questions sometimes have the most difficult answers. So
Correct.
don't think that this is a stupid question. Don't think it's a simple question. Don't think I'm demonstrating my stupidness. Go ahead and ask your questions.
100%.
In a sales situation, maybe if you're really worried, you can even put it in a way like, this is something I do most of the time. If I feel like it's a question maybe that is only relevant to me, or it may sound stupid, I would probably be very vocal about it. I would say, can I ask a stupid question?
Mm.
The moment you do that, your prospect or the other person sympathizes. They automatically say like, hey, no problem, just ask, shoot the question. That's one way to fight that objection that you may personally have, or if you feel that people will really consider it stupid, state it straight away. Say like, let me ask a stupid question, or let me ask a basic question. Sometimes I say like, I'm going to ask this question which seems very obvious, but I just want
Mm.
to get your opinion. So you can
Correct.
use different techniques to ask questions which may sound simple, which may sound stupid. Go ahead. With that, I'll just jump into the next slide, Azi. Next slide is where we're going to ask about the type of question.
Mm.
We're going to talk about the type of questions. So there are two main types of questions. Azi,
Mm.
would you like to take this?
For sure, yes, yes. So there's actually couple of type of questions, but we are only going to focus on two elements. Now, these two elements are day to day we use. Yes, yes. What did you have for lunch today?
I had rice.
You had rice. Is it good?
Yes, it was good.
Right.
My wife
So
is watching the stream, so I can't say anything more than that.
the answer I got is a yes. Or probably sometimes you can get an answer, a no answer. So these
Yes,
are
that's
the
right.
questions. We call them close-ended questions. Close-ended questions is also important in a conversation, but apart from the close-ended questions, as a sales expert, we are encouraging you to use open-ended questions. Obviously, you need to have the right balance of these questions. There's no particular ratio saying, hey, you need to ask 90% close-ended questions or 80% open-ended questions. Rest is close-ended. No, not like that. But you need to. That's why you are gifted with a beautiful brain to use your intuition to use the right balance. Why it's important is the more you ask these questions, close or open-ended, majority we encourage to use the open-ended questions, because the audience or the client will explain more, give more information about the situation or the condition or the pain points. So I hope I answered your questions.
Yes, Azi, I must also tell the audience, the listeners, the viewers, I'm used to answering questions, not as close-ended questions. So it was a wrong person that Azi asked the question. General person would have said yes or no. The reason I do that is because as a past salesperson, I don't want conversations to end with closed-ended questions. So I'm used to answering them in a long form, building a question. Like the way I said, like, okay, and I don't want to comment about it because my wife cooked the meal. Like my wife is watching this, automatically builds a conversation on itself. So, wrong person to ask that question. But again, another technique that, as a salesperson or as a person who wants to build a conversation, even in a close-ended question, that's probably a way that you could do it.
Correct.
Great. So let's jump into the next section where we're going to ask why. Why is it important to ask questions? So let's go straight away into the 6 points. Azi, over to you.
Yeah. So why it's important? Because questions actually give us more clarity. Because question is, I would say, my personal opinion, yes, it's a fundamental aspect of human communication, right? Because when we dive deeper into questioning, it's actually generate curiosity, where we will be able to explore more avenue of knowledge. So understanding the customer. So knowledge, when the client explain more, which means that it will help us to understand the customer. Second point is building rapport, because now in virtually it says only 3 seconds that you can actually have that attention span. Imagine most of us are glued to mobiles or devices, and keeping the rapport is really important when you are having a conversation. And by active listening and asking the right questions, asking the balanced questions, I would say, will help you to connect with the client, connect with the audience. Because you need to feel special, right? The person, when I'm speaking to you, Yasas, you have to feel, hey, this person is actually talking to me, this person is actually listening to me, right? And that will generate a positive attitude towards the other person. And rapport is important in any environment, right? Rapport is actually helping you to close the deal.
Definitely.
So that's the second point. Why don't you take the third point and fourth point?
The third point, I think Azi touched it a bit as well, is uncovering your objections. Because if you don't know what your objections are, you will never know how to respond, what to say, or how to fight those objections, or how to bring in, how to break those objections. So questioning definitely helps you to uncover your objections. And through these questions, by building the rapport, building the uncovering the objections and understand the customer better, you can slowly qualify your leads in a sales situation. Because one of the biggest problems as salespeople is understanding what the customer wants and seeing whether this customer is really serious about it. So you need to qualify your customer and see whether it's worth spending more time. Is there a genuine requirement? Is there a genuine problem that we can solve? And through that, you can demonstrate your expertise, because you will be answering with the right questions. And obviously, last important fact is sales conversion. That's what we all want, right, Yasi?
100%. 100%.
So sales conversion happens through this process. So this is why questioning as a technique is very important, and why you need to consider questioning as a point. We are running over time, but I think it's good for us to finish this slide deck today
Correct.
rather than jumping
Correct.
into another day and having a part three.
Yeah.
So please excuse me. I'm going to take a few more minutes to talk about why we avoid questioning as normal humans, or why are we worried to ask questions. Number one is fear. We are worried, we don't want to ask questions. Sometimes, depending on the situation, depending on the hierarchy in your organization, depending on the type of customer you speak to, you may feel that you're challenging the status quo by asking questions. So you might feel like, example, if you're speaking to a CEO of a company, if you're speaking to a senior person, a mature person, an older person, maybe you don't feel it's right to ask a question, especially in countries, South Asian countries or Asian countries like ours. We tend to not challenge, or we tend to not ask
Mm.
questions because we feel we might offend someone. But it's
Correct.
not the right way. What you need to do is you need to develop questions in a way that you could ask it without insulting, without upsetting a person, or you put it in such a way that they don't even feel it's a question.
Mm.
The point, next point we discussed is not wanting to look stupid, and we talked about how you can avoid that situation. And final one is not willing to be viewed as uncooperative or disagreeable, because none
Disagree.
of us want to be considered like, oh, he's a pain. He's always asking questions. He's trying to be a smart guy. These are the type of situations that we feel by asking questions, we might be considered difficult, we might be considered
Correct.
that we are not a cooperative person. So,
Yeah.
if you understand these objections, if you know these are the reasons why we are avoiding questioning, now you know how to get out of it. There was a example I used to always say. Generally, in a classroom, when you're seated, even as students or for undergraduate studies or postgraduate studies, you kind of don't want to raise your hand and ask a question. From my small days, I knew this is one objection I had, but I want to ask questions. So as a reason, wherever I sat, and people who know me, I would always sit
Mm.
in the right in the front of the classroom. The reason is then I don't see others, and I could ask the questions from whoever was teaching me without any objections. Because if you're seated at the back, then you see everyone in front of you, and you're worried.
Correct.
You know that people are going to look at you when you ask questions. But when you're seated right in the front, nobody, you can't see. Even if people laugh at you, you don't see. So
You don't
personally,
see
I
it.
used to be a person who sits right in the front wherever I am, so I could ask questions. So just something that I thought that I could add in. So that's it. I think we are almost
Awesome.
at 18 minutes.
Yes.
We I
Yes.
feel like it was a marathon today. We were rushing point after point, but just to remind you, join us. There's so much of things we can talk in detail. We can have
Mm.
a lot of details. If you specially join our NAS.io group, that's an exclusive group. If you go in NAS.io /#33, that is where actually you can find exclusive group, and you can involve with us. Also, you can find me and Aziz both in LinkedIn. And please
Correct.
send us a message, drop a comment below these videos, whichever platform you're watching, and we are there to help you. So, with that,
Absolutely.
let's end today's episode of A to Y. By the way, Aziz, this is the 10th episode. We've done 10
Wow.
consecutive weeks. Can you believe?
Congratulations to us. High five.
Yeah,
Congratulations to
high
us.
five. So 10 weeks and a lot more to come. So please share this if you feel anybody would find this interesting. Leave a comment, ask questions, engage, and we'll see you next week as well.
We'll
I'm
see you
Aziz
next
signing
week.
Yasa signing off.
Yeah, I am Yasa signing off. I am Yasi signing off. See
Okay.
you both
See you
next
next
week
week.
then.